What up, everybody? Sorry about the dark video here. This is Console Truth. I'm gonna wait for this motherfucker to go around me. I had to make a video. You know, it's been a while since I made one. And I've been given good ammo, and I'm probably just feeding the troll on this here. But you know what? I don't care. Anybody who's watched, Samuel Geek or Samuel the GTA, whatever the fuck he's going by now, he's, in his last two videos, talking about how that this gen is the greatest generation ever when it comes to gaming. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a great gen, there's quite a few good things, but it's not the best ever. Now, I know this is all opinion. What I'm going to say is opinion, but, I've been gaming a lot longer than Sam has, and quite a few of you out there. I'm not trying to say that makes me better or my opinion fact, but I would say there's going to be a little more weight behind it. Now, first of all, you saying that people that like older gen stuff, shit, as my phone gets dropped, sorry about that, who likes older stuff, they're saying, well, you're just relying on nostalgia, middle age, blah, 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 whatever. However, though, he doesn't realize that this basically applies to him with this gen. How do I mean? Well, let's see, the dude's, what, 20 years old, give or take? Which would mean, with the 360 coming out about 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago, that would make him, what, 13 or 14 when the 360 came out? Which basically means he was a kid at the same time, and he's going based off nostalgia. Which also means, too, he was about, that would make him, what, about 3, maybe 4 when the PlayStation 1 came out? Which means he falls into this category of dumbasses who doesn't think that gaming was around before 1995. Now, what do I think is the best gen ever? Once again, this is a great gen, but the best ever, 16-bit era. Why? Well, because that was back in the day when you had Sega, of course, and Nintendo, and to a lesser extent, NEC with the TurboGrafx 16. A lot of the stuff that we have now started back then. Online gaming, guess what? Look up the X-Band and the Sega channel. CD game, Sega CD, Turbo Duo CD, or TurboGrafx 16 CD, whatever. You could also throw in maybe the 3DO because that came out in 94, but that was a 32-bit system, so yeah, it's kind of pushing it there. Let's see, what else can you do? Now, he's talking about multitudes of genres or choice. Well, there was a lot then, too, just as much as there is now. And more games being released now? Yeah, it is, but a majority of it is fucking shovelware. That's one big thing that complaint that Nintendo has had, is that a lot of the shit that they put out is shovelware from third-party companies. Now, as far as genres, it was a little more limited. I'll say that, no question, because you couldn't really have first-person shooters because of limitations of hardware. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there was a Doom available for the Super Nintendo and also one for the Sega Genesis as well. I'd have to look up on it. It's been a while yet to, forgive me. Now, when the Super Nintendo came out and was in the U.S. in like September, October of 91, I got it for my 12th birthday in December of 91. Now, already it's going to say, well, see, there he goes, going nostalgia. This guy's pushing middle age, which isn't even fucking close. I am over 30. Fuck it. But I was about the same age that Sam was when he got the 360. Give or take, a year or two. But yeah, just as many genres as you do now, and as many games coming out. There's a shitload of games for all 16-bit systems, especially the big two, Sega, the Genesis, or Mega Drive, depending on where you're at. Yes, I just picked my nose. And the Super Nintendo. And as far as game pricing, now unless you're gonna, and Sam will probably do this shit, unless you're talking about inflation and throwing shit up with that, games back in the days of the cartridge were, by and large, cheaper than what they are now. You got to figure your majority of your 360 and PlayStation 3 games are $60. The Wii is $50, and it was $50 across the board up until this gen because they fucking raised it. Now you go back to the time of cartridges in the 16-bit era. Like I said, there were some anomalies just because RAM was fucking expensive back then. Most games were right around the $40 to $45 mark. See, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 45 is cheaper than 60, by about 15 bucks. I don't have a math degree. I could be wrong. Who the fuck knows? So, that's a strike there. There were some aberrations, of course, and I'm going to see if I can find some better lighting here, so just give me a second. It's getting dark. There are some aberrations, like I can remember back in 1992, at least I'm pretty sure it was 92, getting Street Fighter II, the original for the Super Nintendo, and having to pay $80 for it because of the RAM, just because it was as expensive as it was. There were a couple other games that were like that too. Zelda, if I'm not mistaken, I paid like $60 for it. But by and large, most games were around that $40 to $45 range. So that puts a hole right through your theory right there. Once again, unless you're talking about inflation, which is just fucking stupid because, yeah, shit then would have been more now. So yeah, there were some aberrations. I think the most I ever paid was $80 for Street Fighter, and I believe, God, there's like one game that was like right around 100. But essentially, everything that we take for granted now started back then in the 16-bit era, especially the online. Playing, yeah, that's about the biggest thing right there is the online that this gen did. Of course, this gen has better graphics, but every generation jumps, unless you're a Nintendo, in which case the Wii is marginally better than the GameCube. And the biggest reason why this is not the greatest gen ever is because of the online. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, day one updates, just look at Resistance 3. You also have day one DLC, which I'm not really that, I can really give two shits about that, because the majority of the time it's free. And you also have patches all the time, and of course, content locked on disc that they say, oh, guess what, it's downloadable content that you got to pay extra for. So that's another thing right there that makes games more expensive, is if you buy the shit that's already on the disc that you got to pay for to unlock it under the guise of downloadable content, it costs more. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Because back in the day when you had cartridges, there was really no online structure. Yes, there was the X-Band, and that was only limited to a few games here and there. It wasn't really that big in the second channel, but companies had to be on point when they first released it. There was no patches. You couldn't do it. There was nothing you could do to fix the game once it was released, short of doing a recall and redoing everything in general. And that's probably one of the biggest things that's shitty about this gen is the multiple patches, because companies nowadays rush to meet a deadline that they'll be like, you know what, we'll just set them out this, while it's going through printing and everything else, we'll work on a patch, we'll release about a week later, make the game better, so people will stop bitching. You couldn't do that back then. So, I didn't want to take too long on this here. Another reason why, too, you have the 16-bit gen is the best. That's when you started having a lot of mature content and themes, as well as games concentrating a majority on story versus just rescuing the princess or getting a high score. 8-bit time, yeah, you had your deals like Zelda or whatever that did have a bit of a story, but a majority of it was just get to the end of the level, hey, you beat the game, good for you. But with the 16-bit, not saying it started, but there was more push towards more mature gaming and more story-driven gaming. Biggest example of that, of course, once again, is going to be Zelda. Metroid even had a lot more to it. And, of course, probably the best game of the gen and one of my favorite games, and this isn't because of nostalgia, because when I say this game, some people are going to say it fucking sucks just because it's sprite-based and it's not, CGI crazy like a motherfucker. And that, of course, is Final Fantasy VI. Of course, here in the U.S., it was released as Final Fantasy III. We all know that. If you don't, what are you doing watching this? You don't know shit. You have no say anyway. And, I mean, that thing dealt with death, suicide, betrayal. There was a lot of story behind it, and probably one of the greatest Final Fantasies ever. And this isn't because of nostalgia. You just look up anything having to deal with Final Fantasy as far as the different games and what people think about them. Final Fantasy VI, from here on I'm going to call it 6, even though I know it was 3 here in the U.S., but Final Fantasy VI ranks is usually number 1 or number 2 across all the lists. Now, I did like Final Fantasy VII a little bit better just because of nostalgia and because it got me into RPGs, but I'll even admit that Final Fantasy VI was a superior game. It's like when you go to music, I like Metallica. I'm talking older Metallica, newer kind of game. To me, my favorite album was Ride the Lightning. However, though, their best and technically superior and most popular, maybe not the most popular album, but best critical album of all time was, damn, she was kind of cute, was Master of Puppets, which came out 2 years later. See, that's what I'm saying. I can have a favorite that's not what's considered the greatest, but I still recognize what is the greatest. So, yeah, Sam, unless you're trying to troll, considering the fact that you're basically being hypocritical with your comment about nostalgia because of the age you were when this gen started, just shut the fuck up, dude. I mean, I was gaming before you were even a glint in your mom's eye, and when 16-bit was raging in 91, 92, if I do my math right, you were either just barely out of your mom's twat, or, you know what I'm trying to say here. It's late at night, I'm trying to get here. But basically, you were still sucking on tit for milk and shitting your Pampers, while people like myself and that were older, that have been around a little bit longer, were playing these awesome games. Yeah, maybe you played it later, But come on, dude. If you're 20 now in 2012, that means you were born in 1992, which means by the time you were, say, 5 or 6 and could really start enjoying the games, you already had your that'll be what, 97. You already had your PlayStation 1, your N64, the Sega Saturn. You're already well into the 32-bit era. So, which was pretty good, but still, best genre or the best era ever, 16-bit. That's my opinion. I know you don't have to agree with it, but dude, saying this is the greatest gen ever, that just shows how hypocritical you are, how fucking stupid you are, and how you shouldn't be making comments about nostalgia when in fact you're using that yourself to make your point. And come on, the cheapest, widest range of games and all that, fuck no. 16-bit pioneered a lot of the shit we do today. If it wasn't for that era, we wouldn't be where we're at now. So I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but you got to at least respect that fact that 16-bit is up there. Now, like I said, this gen, once again, it is pretty well up there. I'll give it its due. I'm going to turn some light on here. I'll give it its due. It's probably in the top 3, 4, but it's not number 1. And I think so just shows that you don't know shit about gaming and you haven't been gaming long enough to formulate a good opinion. Because essentially, once again, you're only been around since the 32-bit era, which is only 2 generations ago. So, basically, your opinion doesn't mean shit. You know, get some more pubes on your fucking nuts, and then maybe we can talk. So, yeah, if you agree with me, cool, let me know. If you don't, cool, go ahead. You can say whatever you want. I'm not going to censor this channel. But the 16-bit is where it's at, and that's not because of nostalgia. That's because of everything that I said. And once again, when you are in a generation where you get games that are going to be broken from the get-go, and then you have to download a patch later on to be able to play it, or when you got to pay more to get the full game above the $60, punching holes in your fucking theory, dude. Sorry to be a dick. I mean, I do enjoy watching your channel, if nothing for the stupidity of some of the shit that you say. Some of it I agree with, some of it doesn't. But this gen, the greatest gen ever when it comes to gaming, fucking stupid, man. Fucking stupid.